Once upon a time, near the green forests of Germany, there lived a young man named Hans. And as he grew up, as young people often do, he fell in love with a beautiful woman named Gretel. Now Gretel, he knew she was smart and clever and, from what he'd seen, also very brave. And he thought to himself, well, the partner you find in life needs to complement your strengths and to help you where you need a little help. And truth be told, no one said that Hans was especially clever, but he was hard-working. And so, as he learned a trade, he became a huntsman, hunting in the fields and forests. He even got a job caring for the livestock, well, the wildlife, in the nearby prince's fields and forests. But when it came time to ask for Gretel's hand in marriage, he wasn't sure if he had made enough of himself yet. But lucky for him, when he asked Gretel to marry him, Gretel said yes. And as they began to set up their house and prepare for a family, Hans once again feared he wasn't making quite enough money. And he thought of what he could do. And one day, as he was thinking about what he could do, he was walking down the road and he saw a man standing at the crossroads. He was dressed all in red satins. And the strange thing about the man was, well, his feet didn't quite look right. Sure, they were in boots, but they kind of bulged in the boots, like there weren't feet in the boots at all, more like hooves. Well, the man smiled at Hans and said, "Hans, I hear you have a problem." "Really? Who told you that?" said Hans. "Well, I'm in the business of helping people with their problems. You see, I heard you'd like to be more productive in life, make more money." "Well, yeah, who wouldn't?" said Hans. "I can help you there. I can make you the most skillful huntsman in all the world." "Really? You could win contests, you could earn more money from your master. You could catch whatever food you want. All you have to do is sign this little piece of paper right here. It's a contract, after all. If I'm going to give you something, it's only fair that you give me." Okay. Now Hans read a little, but not nearly as well as Gretel. And he thought, well, I should take this back to my wife and show it to her first. But the man said, oh no, this is a one-time offer. If you don't sign it now, I can't help you. Now Hans should have been suspicious right then and there. Whenever someone wants you to make a decision right away, they're usually trying to fool you. If it's a real choice, a real good deal, it'll be around the next day. But Hans didn't know that yet. So he read it over as best he could, and it said something about, at the end of 7 years, Hans would have to ask this man right here a question the man couldn't answer. And if the man couldn't answer the question, well, he's free and clear. But if he could answer the question, then Hans would become his servant to the end of his days. Wait, what is this part about being a servant forever? I mean, I wouldn't be able to live with my family. I wouldn't be able to help with my children. Well, it's nothing. It's just a little clause I put in there. I like to see how clever the people that sign contracts are. But I'm sure someone as smart as you, someone smart enough to marry such a clever woman as Gretel, well, you must be smart enough to ask me a question I don't know the answer to. Besides, you have 7 years to figure it out." Hans thought about that for a minute. And he said, "Okay." And he signed the contract. "What do we do now?" said Hans. And the strange man dressed in red said, "Just this." And he took the barrel of Hans's gun and blew down the barrel. "Now, whatever you want to shoot at, you'll hit." And sure enough, Hans became the most famous marksman in the entire region. He won contest after contest. His master paid him even more money because he was such an amazing huntsman. And whenever they wanted food from the forests or the fields, Hans could go hunting and find it. And for years, Hans and Gretel lived happily in their house. They had 2 children, and they thought they couldn't be happier. And you know how it is when you're really happy, time seems to fly, and before Hans had realized it, 7 years was almost there. And he began thinking and thinking of how he could ask a question that that man who gave him the contract couldn't answer. He began thinking of the easy questions, but they were far too easy, and then the hard ones, and then the really, really hard ones, but even those he thought, that man looks very smart. Now Gretel, she was a clever woman. She noticed when Hans was sad. And finally, she began asking him what was going on, and at least he was smart enough to tell her. And Gretel knew right away who it was that offered the contract. Hans, you've made a deal with the devil. He's going to come back and take you away forever unless we can figure this out. Lucky for you, I'm good at figuring things out. And she thought and she thought and she thought. They came up with plan after plan, but each one led to a question that Hans was sure the man would be able to answer. Till finally Gretel came up with an idea. It's a good thing she did too. It was the night before the 7 years was up. The next day Hans would have to go out to the crossroads and meet the man in red. And so she said, this is what we'll do. And they made a plan. Always a good idea to make a plan when you're trying to solve a problem as big as this one. And so, Hans went out to meet that man in red. The man said, okay, Hans, 7 years are up. You've been an amazing huntsman. Now it's time for you to ask me a question. And if I can answer it, well, you'll be my servant. But if I can't, you can go on your way with my thanks. Well, you know, I've been thinking about questions, but before we end all this up, I'd like to do a little hunting first. Okay, said the man in red. He figured if it took a few extra minutes, it was no worry for him. And so they began walking across a field. And they saw a mouse running. And he said, shoot that! And Hans said, it's too small. Then they went further and they saw a rabbit leaping through the tall grass. And he said, shoot that! And he said, oh no, far too small. And then he saw a deer far off in the distance. And he said, there's a deer, shoot that! And he said, no, not that one. You see, that's a doe. And, well, she'll have babies in the spring. And we need those to have plenty of deer in the fields. And now the man in red was becoming a little irritated. And as they walked across a farmer's field, far off in the distance they saw a strange-looking creature. It was about 5 feet tall and covered in white feathers and making a weird scaw, scaw, scaw sort of noise and flapping its arms like it was a bird. There you go, said the man in red. Shoot that. It's plenty big and it's definitely not a deer. And Hans raised his gun as if to fire and he said, well, but what is that thing over there? He asked the man in red. And the man said, hey, it's no worry, just shoot it and that'll be the food you can leave for your family in later on. And Hans raised his gun once again and he said, yeah, but what is that creature? And now the man in red was getting even angrier. His face started to turn red as well. And he said, hey, it's no matter, just shoot it now and be done with it. We have business to conduct. And Hans raised his gun a third time and said, yeah, but, what is it? And finally the man in red lost his temper. I don't know what it is. I have no idea what that thing is. And Hans smiled. Good. For now our contract is ended. And the man was so angry he stomped his foot, and the earth opened up, and he disappeared inside, never to be seen again. Although, from then on, that spot in the farmer field smelled just a bit of sulfur. Hans ran up to that strange, squawking, bird-like thing and said, "Gretel, Gretel, it worked! It worked!" And he hugged his wife, and she said, "Wait, wait, wait, be careful! I'm covered in honey and feathers. You don't want to get this all over your clothes, that's for sure." And the two of them walked hand in hand back to their house, where Gretel took a long, long shower. And the two of them lived happily with their children ever after.